Good morning and welcome to the first edition of our Hot Topics series, Return to Work, How Employers Are Bracing for Hiring Challenges. My name is Delia Marin, COO of the Latino Coalition. We are excited to bring together a dynamic group of guests for an insightful roundtable discussion today. To start us off, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Wells Fargo, for helping make this new series possible. We appreciate the support they've given small businesses across the country. And on behalf of the Latino Coalition, I want to thank our presenters for taking the time to be with us today. This is a very hot topic that many of our business owners are dealing with, and we are excited to hear from such an experienced group. And now I'd like to welcome our chairwoman and moderator today, Jeanette Prenger. Along with serving as our chair of the Latino Coalition, she is also the president and CEO of Echo Select in Kansas City. Good morning, Jeanette.
Good morning. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Delia. Welcome to the first edition of the Hot Topics series from the Latino Coalition. We're looking forward to a meaningful discussion today covering the impacts of COVID-19 on businesses and how that has affected the hiring process. I'd like to introduce our panelists today, starting with Raul Salinas. Raul is the managing shareholder in Los Angeles of Alvarado Smith, where he leads a team of attorneys dedicated to client service. Raul is a bilingual lawyer representing private sector clients, such as middle market, Fortune 500, and multinational Latin American-based companies. Good morning, Raul.
Morning.
Our next panelist is the founder of ILC Coaching and founder of Yogurtini, Kansas City, Isaiah Lee Collins. Isaiah is a former college athlete turned entrepreneur at the age of 22, and you don't look much older than that. Today, he owns four for-profit businesses and one nonprofit. After almost 10 years of experience, he now uses this time as a business coach and speaker to teach what he has learned. Good morning, Isaiah.
Good morning, and thank you for the compliment. I'll take that.
Zaid Consuegra Salsa, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is our next panelist. Zaid is an entrepreneur, executive chef, and managing partner at Pirates Bone Burgers, the first 100% plant-based diner in Kansas City, Missouri. Zaid, did I pronounce it correctly?
You did, yes.
Great to see you this morning. And last but not least, Bill Teel joins us today from the Greater Kansas City Restaurant Association, where he is the executive director. Bill also serves on the board of directors of the Navy League of Greater Kansas City, 102.7 Community Radio in Kearney, Missouri, Visit KC, the Greater Kansas City Hotel and Lodging Association, and Second Chance Kansas City. He is also a member of the Kansas City, Missouri Food Advisory Board, a member of the Restaurant Week Steering Committee, and is an ambassador for the Mid-America Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Good morning, Bill. Good to see you.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Thank you all so much for being with us this morning. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it. Hot topics. I'm going to ask you, Raul, to start off by talking about individual impacts of COVID-19 in your business and in what you're seeing with the different business associations you work with.
Well, thank you very much. Through the work at our law firm of Alvarado Smith and the work that I do with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I've seen a tremendous number of impacts, Jeanette. Thank you for that question. You know, obviously everybody has, to the extent they can, been forced to work from home. We have those essential workers that are always on the front lines, but for most of us, we have spent the last year and a half from our home, as evidenced by today. We're all in our respective locations here away from the office location. You know, this hybrid approach, I think, is here to stay. And unfortunately, the hybrid approach for our business meant that there were some jobs that we no longer needed, such as a receptionist coming in to the office because the traffic wasn't there. And many of the offices in the Los Angeles area still to this day are not being fully utilized because most people have resorted to working from home. And what that has done is that has created sort of a new cottage industry of how do you deal with the employee who's working from home? What are the ground rules there? How do you manage and make sure that they're complying with all the labor laws? And so we're seeing a tremendous, I would say, a tsunami of change in the workplace as employers deal with those issues on a case by case, industry by industry, geography by geography basis. And happy to be a part of the presentation this morning and get more into that in just a few.
Well, let me ask one of the other panelists as to the individual impacts on their business. Zaid, you're up and coming with a whole new business model. Mike, Zaid.
Sorry about that. Okay, the effect of the hybrid work that we're dealing with right now doesn't comply to the restaurant industry. It doesn't mesh well with it. So for us, it's been a struggle. One, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into hiring, the part of hiring and how to hire and who to hire. But for us, we're considered essential in a way, since we just have to be here. We can't do it from home. And so that's been the hard part to distinguish how essential it is. But obviously it's our business. We have to maintain it. We have to keep going. So for the fact of the economy to move further and for us to, have our business continue to grow, or at least stay, never mind growing at this point, I think we can just be happy by keeping it alive.
Zaid, remind our audience what it is that you do and why the hybrid doesn't work. That's okay.
Yeah. My name is Zaid Consuegra and I am executive chef at Pirates Golden Burgers, Kansas City's first plant-based diner. So that's why the hybrid work doesn't necessarily fit into the restaurant industry. It's going to be hard. If we find a way to do it, I'm sure some people will take advantage of it. But at this point, it doesn't seem like we're going to be benefiting for being in the hybrid workforce.
But some of the impacts that COVID-19 has had on your business, hiring, I mean, you've had very unique challenges in the restaurant business.
Yeah, now if we go into that, yeah, we've had a lot of unique challenges. We lost 60% of our sales. We lost more than half of our staff. Everything changed. Our menu changed, our hours changed. We used to have, obviously, lunch was a big thing for us because of the offices here in downtown or in the Crossroads area, which no longer are here. So lunch is no longer a thing in the Crossroads at this point. So that really hurt us.
How about you, Isaiah? Tell us a little bit about the impacts on your business, because you have a very different business model than the others.
Yeah, so just so everyone knows what I do, just a reminder. So owner of Yogurtini, it's self-serve frozen yogurt here in Kansas City. And so like you just said, Jeanette, is very interesting because our model is essentially a buffet. And we are not supposed to be open, or at least when we first started, because everything was self-serve. So we really had to pivot. That was the big word in 2020. Everyone had to pivot and figure out what to do. And, like Zaid said, since we are technically a restaurant, we can't do hybrid, we can't do virtual, etc. So instead, we had to figure out how do we accommodate the ones who are doing hybrid or are doing virtual, the ones that are not in the office. Like Zaid said, again, in his area and my area, we are surrounded by businesses and we do a great deal for lunch. Well, they're all working from home now. So how do we serve people when, the vast majority of people, at least a year ago, are working from home? And we've had to pivot, figure out how to get it to them, figure out how to make it super safe, and figure out how to do delivery. And the delivery piece was huge for us because we were very devastated by it. The pandemic started last March, and in April we were down 91% of sales. Like we essentially didn't have business those first couple of months, and it was a disaster. And then we had to recalibrate and figure it out. And once we kind of found a solution, then we started to roll with it from there. So as entrepreneurs know, even before the pandemic, we got to be light on our feet and figure it out. So that's what we had to do.
Bill, you have a different perspective. I mean, with your involvement in the different and associations, Visit KC. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing as far as individual impacts across the industry and in your own association.
Yeah, and I'm executive director of the Greater Kansas City Restaurant Association. We represent over 800 restaurants in Kansas City. And what Zaid and Isaac have said applies to all over 800 of our members. Everybody's gone through some difficult times. Each restaurant kind of faced their own individual difficulties. Those that were able to adapt, were entrepreneurial, survived. A few of them didn't, unfortunately. And it's not just restaurants. I guess when you look at the whole hospitality industry, as you mentioned, hotels, they had a difficult time, and in some ways more difficult than restaurants. Restaurants, we could adapt, we could do curbside, we could push the delivery side of the business. Hotels had nobody coming to visit for a number of months. So it impacted them greatly. It also impacted our suppliers for both the restaurant and the hotel industry. When, as our business decreased 60, 70, 80%, then their business did too, and they had to adapt. So it kind of washed its way all the way through the economy, unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to stay with you, Bill, and ask you the next question. I think it's a hot topic. Some cities have mask mandates. Some companies are mandating vaccines. What are your concerns for the new regulations?
I don't think there's a great deal of concern just with, right now we're dealing with just mask mandates on the Kansas City, Missouri side. We went through the lockdowns and the occupancy limits and the social distancing. So that was a lot tougher. Just putting a mask mandate back in has been a little easier to deal with. There is some confusion here because on the Kansas side of the state line, there is no mask requirement. On the Missouri side of the state line, there is a mask requirement. So that can create confusion among customers. And it's difficult sometimes for restaurateurs to have to be the police in essence and deal with those issues. There's no good way to enforce it. I think politically, they just hope that everybody will conform and follow the policy. And as restaurateurs, we hope the same.
Zaid, how's that affected your business? Has the mask mandate, are you in Kansas City, Missouri, where when you look across the state line and they don't have a mask mandate, or who's vaccinated, who's not?
So I think this was a very personal opinion to take on each restaurant. It's a hard one to choose because we're having to almost delegate as if we knew what was happening, if we were scientists or doctors for that matter, and we're not. We're restaurants. I, as a chef, can only really be okay and secure what's happening within the restaurant, not outside or whoever comes in. So I have no control over that. I think what we're trying to do is just the best possible to the power that we have within the restaurant. But you do lose that once you have so many people walking in and out. There's no way to control it unless you had a bouncer. And honestly, why would we have a bouncer at a restaurant? It is very confusing. It's definitely not my place to say, yes, we should, no, we shouldn't. Personally, I would say yes, everyone should 100% all the time. I shouldn't be at work, or we should just do delivery only. But that's not the case. That's not how we make our money. So just trying to do the best we can, day by day, plan it out. We are working on a new project that should handle a lot of what's going on these days. So I'm very excited for that.
Isaiah, you're in a similar situation. How has the new regulations and how they apply to your locations, have they affected you? Are you concerned about it?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm in the same situation as Bill. So we have 3 locations, 2 of which are on the Missouri side, which have mask mandates. And then one is on the Kansas side, which does not. have a mask mandate there. And so I think the question is very layered. It's a little tougher to answer now versus the first time, essentially a year ago when we had the mask mandate, because a year ago, we didn't really know what we were in for. And so everyone, I would say, took it more serious than they are now. What I've seen in my stores, because I've been talking to my managers and visiting my locations, is, and it is what it is, but people, I would say people aren't taking it as serious because we've been in it for so long. We've been in it for 18 months. So either you're going to wear the mask or you're not going to wear the mask. And I wouldn't say that people are necessarily following the mandate like they're supposed to. And, you know, for me, we hire 15, we essentially have 15 to 18 or 19-year-olds, and it's impossible for my 15 to 19-year-old to tell a grown man or woman to put a mask on because that just doesn't go well. And so we have seen a little bit of backlash with requiring it on the Missouri side. Obviously, the Kansas side doesn't have it. With the numbers going up, our sales haven't been affected on our Overland Park location on the Kansas side. And then they have not been affected for our Shoal Creek location, which is up by Liberty, a suburb of Kansas City for the ones who aren't from the area. But I will say our Plaza location, which is in the heart of the city in Midtown, definitely has been affected. And I think that I have a lot of theories for that, but my main one is I think depending on where you are in the political line, you take these things a little more serious. And usually in a more urban area, you have more liberal minded people. And so I think that's what's affecting our sales at our Plaza location.
Raul, what are some of the legal concerns with labor and employee policies related to the Maxim vaccine? So a little bit different twist on that concern.
Yeah, Jeanette. So the trend we're seeing is that the federal and state laws are all about employee protection, right? And so we've seen a growing trend, particularly out here on the West Coast throughout California, where cities such as Los Angeles and even the state of California are requiring mandates for all employees to be vaccinated. There, I think 19 hours ago, was the city of Los Angeles passed an ordinance to that effect. And even here in Pasadena, where I live, you know, in the restaurant scenario, we're seeing that the city's considering coming up with a new grading level. It used to be that you got an A, a B, or a C, depending on how clean you were. Now we're seeing that that scale is going to be adjusted, I think, on vaccinations. We're taking a look at, on the hospitality side, is our businesses requiring their workers to be vaccinated as a condition of providing employment here. And at the federal level, the Department of Labor has already spoken. They've said that it's okay for an employer to require their employees to be vaccinated, with the exception of those individuals that do not do so for, you know, religious beliefs or because there's an issue with their medical condition. And so obviously the employer has a duty to provide an absolute safe environment, working environment for all their employees. And we're seeing that issue play out in a number of different roles, not only with folks in terms of who gets a COVID. If your employee gets infected with COVID-19, it's easy to say we have to stay home and follow the CDC guidelines. The employers are struggling with, well, what if it's not me, but I was around someone that did get it? And they have to go through the analysis of, well, were you there in close proximity? Was it more than 15 minutes over a 24-hour period? It's just a myriad of issues that employers have to deal with, on top of a number of changes that are affecting the workplace, minimum wage issues, a growing trend to getting away from the gig employment, for example, and treating employees not as independent contractors, but as employees. And of course, rising minimum wage issues that are affecting businesses across the country.
It's a lot to think about. And you know, as businesses open up, they start to get out of this one era of the pandemic, and then you have these new varieties. Hiring processes, returning to work. So some people who may have had to stay home because there's, you know, they were compromised. Or what are the return to work steps looking like, or new hires? Zaid, I'm gonna ask you first. So because you're in a situation where you deal with the public as well as Isaiah on a regular basis, what are the specific steps that you're taking for your work environment? Without the mask mandates, without vaccine, what are you doing personally?
Oh, without mask mandates and without vaccines, that's a hard one. Here, we did have a tight-knit group throughout the pandemic. And we all kind of made an agreement, because at that point we couldn't actually mandate it. So we made an agreement to stay safe within small groups, not to go out, or like at least tell each other if we were having symptoms or got sick along the way. None of my crew got actually sick during the pandemic, which was great. That I really appreciated. I didn't get sick. And then once the vaccines rolled around, we all went and got vaccinated. So now that we're fully open, it's hard. Honestly, it's a very tough thing to do, or to say. We wipe down everything as usual, because quality has always been at the top of our list, and then just as a safe environment too here within the restaurant. But going back to the mask, I mean, once people are in the door, we're supposed to require masks. Some people just come in without a mask. Some people do put them on, but it's hard because you require them to put a mask on when you come in, and then when you sit down, you take them off, and it's a bar. So it's really hard for us to mandate something that takes you 2 feet to the bar.
I understand, Isaiah, kind of the same question, but a little bit different. Because you are having to kind of play bodyguard or enforce, and you have a younger workforce, what's your approach to recruiting and interviewing and onboarding these young people into doing something that's really difficult in a time where we're really not sure, as things change, vaccine, no vaccine, mask, no mask? Have you changed your approach?
Yeah, I would say 18 months ago or even a year ago, it was a little bit different. Just like Zaid, we had a very dedicated team at that time. We had the same people for, as new as 6 months all the way to 3 years. And so that was amazing. That was awesome. So everyone did the same thing. We hunkered down. We make sure we were super safe, and we came in. It's kind of funny. We thought we had extremely good regulations as far as cleanliness standards, but COVID showed us that we can be so much better. So we've upped the ante on that. So that's been cool. But coming to this year, we've really been affected by that. Back in March, between the three locations, we had about 42 employees. And so about March hit, and we were rolling with that same team, and we kind of, missed the wave of everyone else raising prices because we weren't having an issue with hiring. And so since McDonald's and all these other places were raising it to sometimes starting people at $13, $14, $15, we didn't. And so in about a 3-week time frame, we had a mass exodus and lost 20 people. They're like, hey, we love working for you, but they're going to pay me $3 more, $4 more. Cool, I get it. And so we've had to fall in line and raise ours as well to be competitive to keep people. And so to be honest with you, last year we were definitely more selective in who we're hiring. We're kind of just hiring who we can to get them in, just to be completely honest with you. And I think that's where we're at in the restaurant industry. And so we have created a higher emphasis on training and retention and culture to be able to make sure that the people who we maybe wouldn't normally hire get to the standard that we want them, and they start to love the job instead of just, hey, come in and plug into our system. We're making it more about them and serving them, not about just making our restaurant money. And that has been amazing that we'll take even when the pandemic is over. So that's been really helpful.
Bill, I'm going to ask you, have you seen a change in the way people are approaching, especially in a tight market, and it's tight for multiple reasons. So just like Isaac mentioned, some companies are increasing their starting wages, which makes it, less competitive for those smaller businesses. And what are you seeing as a trend?
Well, wages are clearly going up everywhere. And just kind of like Isaac said, employees are not afraid to go from one company to another, for an extra $1, $2 in wages. And restaurants, when you get to the back of the house and cooks, some restaurants are trying to steal cooks from other restaurants. So the wage pressure is clearly there. And the pendulum has kind of swung over in favor of the employee now instead of the employer from a wage standpoint. Some restaurants, I would say more the larger chains are able to offer better benefits. That's easy for a Darden's restaurant that has Capital Grill and Eddie V's and Red Lobster to do that. The smaller restaurants, it's tougher to provide the benefits. So, the one thing they can do is try to offer higher wages, try to offer a better work environment potentially. Restaurants are scrambling in any way they can. We had a job fair with our association with, quite frankly, limited results. Restaurants are giving a incentive for an employee to bring in a new employee. So, anything you can think of, restaurants are trying, and I would say with still somewhat limited success.
Technical difficulties. Trying to get off of mute. Raul, I would like to have you continue with this line of questioning with two perspectives. One, as a trend with small businesses, Hispanic businesses, something they might want to keep in mind as best practices. But the second part of that is you're in professional services, a little bit different, a little bit unique. And so 2 parts. One, with your ability to look at Hispanic small businesses, how that's affected, and then personally, professionally in your own offices.
Yeah, Jeanette, if I could just comment on something that Bill said, and then I'll certainly get to your responses real quick. I think that the restaurant industry has a high hurdle to take because most of the restaurants pay minimum wage, and so when we're looking at the market right now, it's the restaurants versus the federal government in some respects because of the federal subsidies that employees have been receiving, and so they have to make a decision. Well, do I go work for minimum wage for restaurant X, or do I stay home, avoid the expenditure of gas and car maintenance and childcare and all that, and stay unemployed and take advantage of the benefits there? And on top of that, you compound that with a whole nother layer of folks in light of COVID-19 sort of reevaluating, well, wages are going up, I'm going to be having to do more. And that's true, particularly in the restaurant industry, whether you're a cook, a dishwasher, a server, a hostess. Most restaurants have had to ask their employees to do more because they're paying them more. It means that they have less staff on place. And folks are evaluating that. We're seeing that this week with schools opening and many jurisdictions not having enough bus drivers there as well. And so we have a tremendous amount of competition going out there. I think, we're going to see a slow change back to normality once the subsidies at the federal and state level and the unemployment benefits are not as attractive throughout the country. And we should have a growing labor base there. I will tell you that in preparation for this, I spoke with one of my clients, a restaurant owner, and I asked him, well, what do you do to get work? And he says, well, he says, word of mouth is sort of my best choice there. But on top of that, there's a application called Home Base. And I encourage all of our listeners here to download that program off the App Store. And what this particular restaurant owner does is he lists what his jobs are, what the hours are, availability. And so people can decide to come in and work and get trained and so forth if that shift that's available makes sense for them. It's all app driven, which should appeal to the younger generations. In terms of Hispanic business enterprises, look, we've been getting the short end of the deal. Many of the Hispanic business enterprises were not equipped, did not have the support to be able to timely, efficiently apply for the PPP loans a year ago. They and other businesses of color were left out of the equation, and the statistics bear that out. Maybe 1 or 2% of all applicants were Hispanic businesses or businesses of color, women-owned businesses, and simply because they didn't have the necessary tools to show up at their bank. Many of them didn't have banking relationships. They operate on a cash and carry basis. So they've been struggling all along. I think if this has taught us anything, is that we as a country need to build a better ecosystem for those kind of businesses, for, as Bill suggested, for the businesses that are not part of the national chain, but reflect, the mom and pops throughout the country. We just are not doing enough of that. We're the main streets throughout our cities, throughout the country. It's a slow death for them as they compete against larger chains. And really, if we're going to try to maintain the quality of life here, we do and should encourage our state legislatures to do more to provide an ecosystem that models and supports the businesses that are represented certainly on this program, as well as other businesses of similar ilk.
Well, I agree. An ecosystem is really important. And early on, I was very fortunate that Greater Kansas City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce reached out to me to see if they could help provide resources. And from there, I became more and more involved into the national levels, like the United States Hispanic Chamber, like the Latino Coalition. As a business owner in what they would call, a socioeconomic demographic, whether it's minority or women, we really do need to take it on ourselves to be resourceful and see what some of these associations that are unique to us can help provide, such as the PPP loans and assistance in that manner.
And Jeanette, just to track what you just said right now, I mean, we've all heard reports of it's a Hispanic community that's driving the U.S. economy, right? And within the Hispanic community, it's the women and the women entrepreneurs that are leading the way, and that's no surprise at all. And I'm a big supporter of women entrepreneurs such as yourself and others. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of progress and upscaling there. We just need the rest of the country to get behind us and to provide that layer of support, because as the tide rises for the Hispanic community, it rises for the entire nation as a whole.
I agree 100%. And, we do work in the tech industry. We supply talent, we do government contracting, and I will tell you, our own hiring processes are changing. There are some people that never want to leave their house again. And in IT, you already have the personality sometimes where you're concerned that they work in a silo. So getting them to collaborate. And I've worked with my clients on what is the right personality. So not just the technical skills, but a personality. And I think that applies to any business model. Do you have a personality that fits your culture and can adhere to your core values and supply what you are delivering? And so whether it's, services or products, I do feel that there are some benefits, obviously, in professional services because you have a little wiggle room, though it is a very, very tight market. The same complaints as in the restaurant business. They're getting a few more dollars more per hour somewhere else, so they'll jump ship. So what are the other benefits that you might be able to provide to keep those valued workers, whether it's culture or being able to offer little perks? And then, we personally have not mandated vaccines, but we also, and this leads into the next question, and I'm going to have Raul take this off the bat. We're not mandating vaccines. One of the reasons is that each client has a different set of rules across the United States. So we're in almost all 50 states. So keeping track of that is, and trying to mandate that's not the business we want to be in. But we also have a real concern about privacy issues. Whether somebody admits, has to call in because they have COVID, they've been exposed to COVID, why are they not able to come into the office? And Raul, are there any privacy concerns with some of the regulations that have been implemented?
Well, absolutely. The number one rule is that all employees' personnel records are confidential. And so but with COVID, you can mandate that vaccines be ordered if that's part of your business model at your employment. And if you are, you can do testing as well as the employment arena. And there is a request that if you are exposed to COVID, that you report this to the designated person at your place of employment. So it's nobody's business among the employees whether you got COVID or not. It is the employer's business, and the employer does need to have a point of contact there, whether it's the owner or the owner's designee, who would be responsible for maintaining that confidential information with respect to the medical treatment there. And then it's just like any other sick or illness related issue. The employer has a obligation there. Out in California, we have this rule that says that if you get COVID-19, you presume to have gotten it at the workplace. In Texas, where I have some of my clients, that there's no connection there. And, the philosophy in Texas is it's impossible to really prove where it is that you got it, right? And so we have a number of different jurisdictions throughout the country that are treating this differently. But you are right, Jeanette, in encouraging all of our listeners here and business owners to be mindful of the privacy issues that are present, and making sure that we do everything we can to protect those issues. If one of us got COVID, it's the last thing we want our employees to know, but at the same time, we do owe an obligation to provide a safe working environment for our family and for our community. And that community includes the community of coworkers.
Bill, can you describe what you're seeing as far as privacy concerns, and especially with, an inconsistent application of rules and regulations?
Sorry, there's still a lot of confusion out there, and I'll be honest. You need a good attorney sometimes to lead you through this, because I'm not sure I can tell you what all the rules are, and occasionally I'll get a call from one of our members wanting to know what to do, and I'll refer them to legal counsel, because you can get yourself in some trouble fairly quickly if you're not following the rules correctly and applying them properly. So there is confusion. I know a lot of restaurants are starting to think about if they'll be able to require vaccinations, and I don't know where that's going to end up, where we're going to go with that. And I'm not sure which way I feel on it, but there's no question there's confusion, and I think there'll continue to be, and I don't know where we'll end up at the end of the day on requiring vaccinations and those types of things.
Isaac, how about in your company, do you have any concerns about privacy issues?
Yeah, I would say this is a tough one for me to answer too. We have our own processes and on how we do it. If someone gets COVID, we make sure that they come forward and tell us what's going on, just so we can notify the people they had worked with in the last week. So it's a kind of a personal responsibility there, and caring about the people that are around you, so we can let them know. Even if they have someone around them or in their household who get it, we just want to make sure we're ahead of it just in case. As far as privacy issues, I'm kind of in the same boat, like kind of what Bill was talking about. Like I kind of refer to my attorney on some of those things, on what I can do and what I can't do, because everything's changing so fast with the rules and regulations and what you can do and can't do and how you should handle certain situations, that it's hard for me to know that these things that we're putting in place are the right thing to do, or if they're up to date. So that is one thing that we do is just make sure that we know, hey, if you get COVID, we need to know immediately so we can talk to the people that were around you. So.
Well, that kind of leads into another question. And Zaid, I don't know if your privacy issues are much different than Isaac's, but could you tell us, what is the most significant change that you had to implement in your business model to help keep those doors open?
I think we're going to go back to culture within the company. It's one of the things that I've seen trending just in the past few years anyways, within entrepreneurship. And it's starting to make more sense that you create this positive culture within your company, and that you as an employer are working more for the employer than the employee is working for you. So if we go back into culture and create this good culture, especially within small businesses, because it's so important to us, we are not going to be able to compete with big chains head to head. So we have to create something better than what they're offering, whether it be wages. We recently went up to 15 an hour starting because we just had to, but then we reflected that within our prices again, as of course. And we want to change the culture and make sure that people stay long-term here. We want to make sure that we as a company stay long-term here within the Kansas City Metro. So if changing the culture and making it super positive and a good working place that you actually want to come back to work to every week or whatever shifts you have, that's our main goal right now. It's making sure that we create a good working culture within the restaurant. That way our employees are not even able, but are wanting to come back to every shift they have. And as far as privacy, we keep a very, again, it goes back to the culture and making sure that they do know that we are a tight-knit group and that one person will affect everybody else. So as long as we make that work and we let people know, not only verbally, but also financially, so raising their wages, let them know that they are worth something to this company, we're expecting to get back, something out of it, which means just the respect that we're doing the best that we can for them and that they'll do the best that they can for us as a company.
Jeanette, can I just tag on to that if I could? I volunteer my services for a hospital out here in East Los Angeles, a heavy Democratic, not Democratic, heavy Latino demographic is what I meant to say. And back in the height of the COVID infections a year ago, the death rate in that hospital from ICU deaths from COVID went up through the roof. And we saw significant numbers in November, December, January of COVID-related deaths. The vaccine then came, and now with this Delta variant, the numbers are very telling. Of the 15 or 16 patients, down from 200, as of last, at the height of it, down to about 15 as of last week. 95% of those patients were unvaccinated patients. And therein, I think, lies a story is that, what employees want is to know that when they report to work, their employer cares about their health and their safety. What customers care about when they go into a restaurant is that the restaurant cares about the customer's health and safety. What folks that check into a hotel want to know is that the hotel is clean and safe and has taken all these measures. And so I think that the key there is to get as many of your workforce folks vaccinated and to be proud of that vaccination, because the statistics themselves, just anecdotally from what I shared at the hospital numbers, bodes and well for those that are vaccinated. And if you want to ensure a constant source of labor and avoid folks from not showing up and so forth, vaccination is a key, and mandating it at the work site, I think, is a key to a stable environment, both from a business perspective, from an employee perspective, from an employee morale perspective, and for the greater good.
Bill, what's your take? Microphone. Bill. If I had $1.
My take on vaccinations or
On changes to as far as what are we doing to help keep the doors open? And so vaccinations we started off with privacy, right? And then we went into changes in how we hired and what we did to keep those workers. And so and then of course that also enveloped, to Raul's point, what can we do? And Raul, what you bring up is there's a lot of crisis management enveloped in all this, and costs, and a lot of leadership EQ to determine what your people need, the people that are front facing to customers people on the back office? What do they need to feel that you care and you're making sure they're in a safe environment? And so, Bill, we went specifically into vaccinations, but it is what are the challenges that you are seeing and that have changed your business model?
Yeah, I would say overall, this is a fluid situation. I mean, we've never faced anything like this, at least in my life in business. Everything's changed since March of 2020, and I'm not sure where the end is, and I'm not sure how we get there. And just as we're going through this conversation, I was thinking how important it is for particularly independent individual restaurateurs to be part of an association like the Hispanic Chamber, maybe the Restaurant Association, but resources that you can draw on to help you get through this, because it's new to all of us. So it's nice to have an association or that can give you feed you information, that can answer questions, that can help lead you through the PPP loans, the restaurant relief revitalization funds that we went through, some of the legal issues that we're all going to face. So it's hard if you're just sitting there in the back of your restaurant trying to figure out what you're going to do the next day and you have nobody to lean on. That's tough. So I think you need to develop relationships and become involved with your fellow restaurateurs and your associations to help you find the answers as we move ahead for the next 6, 12, 24 months, whatever it's going to take.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a two-part question. And I'm going to start with you, Isaac. So the first part, biggest challenge so far with the pandemic, that's part one. And part two, what's your 2022 outlook?
Interesting. Okay. So biggest challenge. I mean, I have to just throw out two things because they both come to mind. And it's been more of a 2021 than a 2020, but it's a culmination of, but hiring, obviously, which we've been talking about. And then the other thing, I don't think that's talked about enough right now in the business world, is supply chain issues. So we almost can't get anything as far as supplies goes. I mean, we're dead in the water if we don't have cups to put the frozen yogurt into. And we are having to find those from anywhere and everywhere. We had to use styrofoam cups for about, I don't know, a handful of weeks. And so those are the two biggest issues that I don't think are going away anytime soon. And I think the solution to the hiring one is what Zaid said about culture. But as far as supply chain, I have no idea as far as that goes. 2022, what I have seen that has been really amazing goes along with what I talk to my clients about with my coaching, which is called Purposeful Profits Academy, is you have to make your business purposeful. The thing that's being talked about right now, you know, with this concept of the Great Resignation going on, where they're saying 40% of the workforce is going to quit in the next couple of months when people ask their employees to come back to work because they don't want to, is they want to work for something that's bigger than themselves. Why am I doing this? Why does this work matter? Why should I care about working here? And if you don't give them a reason to do that, they are going to jump ship because everyone's raising prices. They're going to make money. They want to make more money. They want to be respected. And they want to know that the work they're doing matters. So we have always done that. Before I was a business owner, I hated working for companies that didn't give me a reason to be there. And so that was always my approach. And we've doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on that. And we're going to 5 times double down on that in 2022 of flipping it and making sure we are employee focused first. And I have the mindset of I have 42 bosses and I'm listening to them and critiquing and changing and altering based off of their feedback and what's going to make them happy within reason, obviously. So that's my 2022, just care about my people harder, and that'll spill over to my customers.
I love it. Zaid, can you quickly talk a little bit about what your outlook is for 2022?
Okay. I'd go back to applaud on that last part, Isaac. That was great. The supply chain is going to be a big issue, and we're all dealing with it. I'm dealing with 3 companies right now. I'm trying to figure out how do we get our supplies in And how do we not make our customers upset, or how do we make them understand that we don't have any power to do what we had, done before in the last, 100 years of restaurants, because we can't get anything, or like some things, even if we wanted to. We can cry wolf all day long, but we're not going to get some things like the cups. I know a lot of people are dealing with that. Another thing I want to throw out there is that, if it wasn't for my other partner, which is, I don't think, how do I say this correctly? I am grateful to have this partner of mine, which helped us get our loans. So if it wasn't for her, then we wouldn't have been able to get all those loans. And I'm not 100% sure we would still be here, because it was such a hard hit to begin with. Yeah, make those connections, like we were saying, make the connections within the chambers. Those are great resources, 100%. I didn't believe it before. I didn't join the chambers before, and now we're a part of most of them. So
Those associations, yeah.
Yes, they're great.
Bill, can you give us a little bit of an outlook for 2022?
Yeah, and I'm always optimistic about things, but I think 2022 is going to be better. Going back to what Isaac said, I think the supply chain issues are real. A big part of that is finding employees. It's not just restaurants. The suppliers can't find enough employees either. I know some of the major suppliers have had to cut back on the numbers of deliveries, and in some cases have to cut off customers because they don't have enough workers to get supplies to them. It's amazing. But I'm just convinced with the science and the vaccines and everything, we'll get through this. And I think 2022 will be good, particularly for the restaurant industry. There's pent up demand right now from customers, consumers. They want to get back in restaurants and enjoy a good time out. And so I think 2022 is going to be good.
I'm so happy to hear that. Raul, what are your thoughts as far as biggest challenge and the outlook for 2022? And again, you can give us a blended approach as to what you're seeing with the demographic you serve, or your own personal firm.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, for any business and for the nation as a whole is education, trying to understand where are we going with this Delta variant. We're in the middle of the tunnel and the light seems so far away as we walk through it. It's a different tunnel than we had a year ago, right? But we're still in this tunnel. We thought we were out of it and we're back into it. And I think education and informing the country about what the science says about this is key. And the more folks that we could get educated on that, the less controversy I think we're going to see there. Business development, I think, is a big part for any business, and trying to figure out how do you grow your business when everybody's staying at home, and what's a new way of building relations is important. I think also is making sure that the glue at the office is important. There is value to be around the water cooler at the office, and if everybody's at home, how do you adjust and keep that morale up so that you have a vibrant workforce? I would say I'm bullish on 2022, big time. I agree with Bill that a lot of pent-up demand. We saw that when we looked at the East Open last spring. And we also, I think, have shown that as a country, we're resilient, we're empathetic, and all of us want to get through this together. So I think as a nation, we will move forward. As from the business community, I think we could always do more for the small business owner. And I hope that organizations like the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, like the Latino Coalition, and chambers across the country speak up for the little guy here, because they need our help, and we need to provide that kind of support.
I agree. Supply chain has been an issue. It's been a fluid situation. There's that stress of, is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Additional costs, overhead, taking care of your people. But one of the things I like about Americans is the Ken on the back of American. We're not Americant, and we look at things optimistically. I feel 2022 is going to be a great year. to your point, Bill, people want to get out, they want to see each other, but we're still exploring how do we build those relationships? How do we continue to build our businesses when we're under this unique paradigm? I'm always cautiously optimistic, and I cannot thank each of you for taking the time today to share your experiences. It was great to hear from different industries, and I know all of us are looking forward to a new normal.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.
Fabulous conversation, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting our discussion today, Jeanette. It was a fabulous job, everyone. Very incredibly thought-provoking. The TLC team will be sure to share today's presentation with our network. And, additionally, we want to invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with what's happening with the Latino Coalition. I also want to let you know that we are so excited for the virtual edition of our Latina Prosperity Summit this fall, where we will have an opportunity to talk to leading Latinas who are breaking barriers across the United States. This event is free to attend, and we will be live streamed on October 14th from 3 to 6 p.m. For more information about this event and future updates, please visit thelatinocoalition.com or email us at info@thelatinocoalition.com. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.